Hello, everyone. My name is Scholar. For those who are not familiar with me, I'll do just a quick little introduction. I have been playing VRChat for about 4 years now. I've been teaching in VRChat for about maybe two and a half. Prior to that, I had done a lot of BDSM IRL experience. So I have been a part of the BDSM community for about 14, almost 15 years now. And since then, I have learned quite a bit in regards to a plethora of kink play, which we'll go into at other classes. But for today's main focus is kind of a foundational setting for introduction to BDSM, which is consent. Consent is going to be the main fundamental skill that you're going to need to have, and there's a lot of capabilities that are associated to it, things that are not going to be clear or intuitive for a lot of people who are just coming in from what would be considered vanilla. But again, at any point in time, if you have questions and you're in the world, please go to Taku. He is the microphone. I'll hear him through you. And from there, I'll be able to answer it. But there will be a number of things that I want to ask, talk, will be more of a discussion more than a lecture. And we'll go through a couple of the important parts of it. So we have a number of people here. First things first, I kind of want to get a clear definition of what consent is, right? A lot of people, they always start thinking is like, oh, consent is all about just saying, I say yes to the thing or I say no to the thing. And for the most part, that's about 80% of it. There is a lot of things that you need to take into consideration when given consent. There is especially a lot of it coming into play with BDSM. Those factors would be the risk, the awareness, the ability and understanding of what they're trying to convey to you, and you interpreting it correctly. This is what makes up that last 20%, and that is going to make the difference between I know what I'm getting into and I'm in a situation that I may be in too deep. Now, before we even start talking about consent, you need to first talk about communication, right? So communication is a skill set that I think many people think they have, but there's a lot of blockers that prevent them from speaking, about what they want. So when we start talking about communications and BDSM settings, we are focusing on conveying what I want to do to you or what you want to be done to yourself, right? I am going to give a top perspective in all of these things. If you are a bottom, I will convey in those perspectives as well. So from a top perspective, when we start conveying and talking to people and we do what is called negotiations, we are focusing on what I am comfortable to do with a person. If it's someone who is brand new versus someone who I have been with for many times, many years, the communication is often different. If I were to talk to a stranger, it's not the same way as I talk to a partner. These situations you have to be understanding. If you do pickup play, which is usually when you start, doing scenes or playing around with people at a event, these are situations that you want to be aware of and how you communicate. If I start saying that I talk to, some stranger, that stranger says, oh, I'm up for anything, that's your first big red flag on anything, right? Do not play with that person. They do not know what they're talking about, nor do they know what they want. And the worst thing to be in when it comes to giving consent is not knowing what the other person wants or is expecting to do to you. If they're saying, oh, I'm just here to pleasure you, I'm here to do what you need to do, that's fine, but then it's on your responsibility to communicate that. Okay? Now, that's one thing, is if you don't know what you're wanting, if somebody says they're up for anything, that's a situation to avoid. But then we start going into the factor of, honest communications, right? Being able to say, I am very much wanting to do X, Y, and Z. Now, I guarantee it within this small group of people that are here, right? You are going to be shy about something to tell to a stranger, right? Maybe not so much in VR, but in IRL, when you are physically there, you will definitely be shy about saying some stuff that you always keep private in your head. This is a situation that you need to understand the culture about BDSM. It's an open communication, right? So long as you're not doing anything like illegal, right? Like actually illegal and or like overtly bad, people will be open to it to a certain degree. They may not want to do it, they may not accept doing it with you, even if there is something that they share, but it is definitely something that they are saying, you do you, I'm going to go out here and, do what I need to do. The way we want to start practicing this amongst everybody here, and I'll stop talking for a bit, I kind of want people to get comfortable with talking about what they want, not just with me or with their partners, but in general, be familiar with the ability to communicate openly and honestly, and be as descriptive as possible. There is something to be aware about doing this, but we'll get on to that after we have a little exercise where everybody kind of is just, introduce yourself, say your name, or say what you want to do. And if you're not comfortable with it, that's fine. Just simply, do this if you're in sign language, or if you are wanting to simply pass, just say pass. So we'll go from the left side over to the right. Peculiar, you are the farthest from the left. If you want to unmute inside Discord or unmute inside VR, that's fine. But introduce yourself, say what you are open to discuss, what are some kinks that you may be interested in finding a partner for, some things that you're interested in learning, that sort of thing.
I'm stuck. Hold on. Okay. Hello, I'm the Peculiars. Wait, should I get in? Okay. Some of the things we are into, because we're a system, pet play, submission, of course, and then we do like things like knife play. Just a little taste of what we're into.
Okay. Let's go with the next one behind you. See titles behind them. Reagan?
Hello, my name is Reagan. Been 6 years in the BDSM experience. I'm into pet play, torture play, female dominance, those are the best, and dehumanization, object play, doll play, and some other ones.
Okay. Zeth?
Hello. So, my big thing that I'm here to explore is in a digital realm, the kinks that are just straight up impossible to enjoy in a digital sense that you can't do in real life, coming off of like extreme pain play, everything all the way up to, well, you get the idea.
Right. Okay. Fawn, is it fair to say that you are wanting to opt out of this? Yes.
Yes, please.
That's fine. No big deal. Chihaya, do you want to say anything? You want to type out, and then I'll read your answer? And then, Lala, I'm not sure if you are mute as well. Okay, if you are, type that out, and I'll read it for him. Again, to your comfort, whatever you want to discuss. You'll pass? Understood. And let's see if there is anyone in the Discord that wants to... I believe they can actually talk. Damn, never mind on that one. I think there's a chat though, isn't there? No?
Yep, there's a chat. If people want
There's a chat?
post things, they're welcome to, and we can read them out.
So, Tef, if you could read the chat out, if there's a question or if there's anything, then that'd be great.
Yeah,
So, Chihaya, I'm looking for service, submissions, but generally with MDLG, DDLG themes. DDLG is like daddy little girl, mommy little girl, and all that sorts. Discipline reinforcements, and lots of aftercare. Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
there is an ask to speak button, but Kit Kat in the chat is saying that they're interested in fear play, abduction play, CNC, and other stuff.
Okay. So I don't know if Tef was able to pick up on that, but for the recording, Kit Kat was dealing with, or they're wanting to deal with more fear play, CNC, all that sorts. Now, I want you to take a couple of notes on this, right? Is what did we just find out? Is that everyone has something different. There's a lot of difference between each other, but there's a lot of commonality between them. And when you discuss a negotiation, you're discussing only about the common, not the uncommon, right? It is not always necessary to talk about what you don't want, only when you want to make sure it is a hard limit. What is exactly a hard limit, right? That is something that we in the community would discuss as barriers, right? When I say, you know what, I'm really into this. That's something like I'm really into. If I'm into something, but kinda, it depends on the person. Not really. I could do it if it's like in the moment, and then you kind of get a little bit into the whole, into the certain play of certain things, and it kind of just slips. That's fine. Not a big deal. That's what we like to call a soft limit. Right? You're pushing the boundary, but you're not past the boundary. And a hard limit is like, dear God, if you say this, I'm going to fucking say red and we are going to stop. No more. No me gusta. I do not like this. We will never play again. Well, not never play again, but we will put everything on a fucking emergency brake and then, stop from there. These are all things that we want to be aware of and be comfortable in discussing in great details with other people, right? Now, there was a topic that was brought up, and we'll go into specific kinks a little bit later down the lines, right? This is when we start talking about like interpretations and such. But the other things that we want to start focusing on is getting that familiarity, discussing with it, being open about it. Now, I noticed you guys used a lot of keywords, right? Some people say, oh, I like knife play. Oh, I like, rope. I like shibari. I love, wax, fire, all that sorts of things. I'm using things that you would use in IRL. But in VR, it's the same. They're good and bad, right? If you are going to be communicating with your partner or partners about certain things and use these keywords, that is up to interpretation. When you interpret, you pray to, whoever you pray to, that they're going to actually start understanding what that means, right? If I say I want to do wax play, what does that mean? Wax is in the mind. So from there, what kind of wax, right? How aggressive are you going to play with the wax? Are we going to do a scene that's going to make the wax play even more intense? Are we then going to go into another scene? Is there going to be a dynamic that's going to be more associated to it? Are you going to use me as a canvas, or is this more like a day at the spa kind of thing? Are you going to use a knife to scrape the wax off? These are all venues that people need to find out, discuss, and understand what they're getting into when it comes to these sorts of plays and keyword usage. Not everybody's going to have the same interpretation. And even for common things like, oh, I'm into humiliation, right? Common thing for a couple of people. I, as a top, like to deliver it. You need to understand what's the limit, right? Some people, there's spectrums of intensity for anything, right? Some people are like, oh yeah, you can call me, a slut. You can call me like a whore. You can say all of these nasty things. But if I went say, oh, I just want humiliation, you say, okay, I'm fine with it. I can then go like, all right, I'm going to degrade you. I'm going to say you're a fucking worthless person. You don't know X, Y, and Z thing, blah, 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 blah. And, because I know you slightly a little bit more, I can use personal things against you. These are things that negotiation would clear up. And if some people don't want to do certain things, certain ways, guess what? Don't play with them, right? If you don't consent to it, it shouldn't happen. If it does happen, then that's a consent violation, and that's something that anyone in this community or in any BDSM community worth their salts would just easily just kick them out. They don't deserve to be in the space. Don't tell them to be in the space. Okay, so talking and using keywords, understanding what that means, go into more details what they are into rather than just simply having a common understanding of what a keyword is. It's very important. Now, when you are in negotiations, when you are talking and you're doing all of these things, there are some base skill sets that a top and a bottom should have, right? For the people who are a bottom, right? Your biggest skill, your biggest thing you need to know is to feel no pressure and to say no, right? If you're able to say no, great, good job. That's the big thing. So many times have I seen in my years doing this, I have seen people feel pressure, right? They feel like they need to belong to the community. They feel like they need to do certain X, Y, and Z things. That bottom right there can, they can take a baseball bat to the thighs, and I fucking squinch when I get slapped on the face, right? People will always try to one up and always will try to push you further past than what you want, right? Only you, as a bottom, can prevent that and do your own exploration. This is kind of like the gym, right? You're going for yourself and your partner, and if you're trying to lift heavier than you're normally used to, you're going to hurt yourself, right? Same thing with BDSM. If you go at other people's pace, you're only going to invite problems that, you may not be able to control. So understand that you need to be comfortable in saying, you know what? I'm glad you brought this up. I'm not really into this. This is what I'm more into. I kind of want to play with you. I kind of don't want to play with you. I kind of want to just be by myself. Control the conversation. Understand that. As a top, when you're negotiating, you are describing what you want to do and also what you are capable of doing. Much like what the bottoms have with controlling the conversation, making sure that they themselves are okay in the situation, the top needs to do the same, but put themselves in a position of confidence, right? I do knife play, so do a number of people here. If somebody says, oh, I want to do knife play, and I'm like, yeah, it's been forever since I found someone who actually wants to, do some knife, little dicey kind of stuff, right? That's great. It's good to have enthusiasm. It's another thing when they start being like, yeah, I want you to start drawing some blood with like needles and sorts. Was there a question? Or is that just a hi? That was just a hi. Okay. When people have like questions on like knife play and all that sorts, or any other kind of intense play, as the top, you need to have the confidence and experience to actually do these activities safely. For certain things, they're a lot more forgiving than others, right? Impact play, it's kind of it's a lot easier to gauge how hard you're actually doing a scene, what you're doing it. So long as you have some basic knowledge on it, you should be fine. If you are going to go into, say, knife play or rope, right? Let's go with rope because it's a little bit more easier to mentalize. If you're doing shibari or rope bondage, first things first, right? If I'm a top and someone says, I want to do some rope, I'm like, great, I can do groundwork. I can tie you up in like a pretty little package. And they'll be like, no, I want to be suspended. As a top, there is a mentality of people questioning your effectiveness, right? Oh, you're not a true top unless you're able to do X, Y, and Z thing. Therefore, you are going to be not a top, right? There's always a marker, a proof of, validity, I guess is a way to put it in a nice way. And they will always push you to learn more. It's okay to learn. It is not okay to do things that you're not familiar. And if you're a top and you have never done rope bondage and then someone says, oh, I trust you to, suspend me, don't do it. It's a bad situation. It's a horrible situation because if your knots are not tight and you tie it in the wrong spaces, we can go to nerve damage. We can go into, poor circulations, heart attacks, and worst case scenarios. I mean, there's a whole list of things that can go wrong, not to mention, bodily harm. These are all situations that you need to be having the confidence behind when you do these acts, right? This is the main song and dance that goes into it. You are going as a top and a bottom. You are describing what you want. You are painting a picture together as what should happen and what shouldn't happen in a given time. As you go further onto that, we now go into the risk, right? So we start talking about honest communication. We start talking about how we negotiate and how the tops and bottoms should negotiate together and some of the things that they need to be aware of. Now, we need to go into the next step, which is the risk. Risk is in everything. It's literally everything. There is not a single thing that you can do that is not risky. In VRChat, it's a little bit more lenient, obviously, because we are physically not here. We are then going to be able to do a lot more But there are some people who have more sensitivities, people who have phantom touch, people who, if you take a knife and you stab them, that is actually going to make them feel something very, very physical, right? Those are situations that you need to be aware of. But if you were to do anything, verbal or mental, there's risk to it. You need to understand what is actually going to happen, what is the reality of the situation, and what is something that you have in your head. When you start thinking about a scene of some sort, you are looking at it from, I'm going to feel this, and this. I'm going to feel so much endorphins. I'm going to be hyped up as fuck. It's like 20 shots of espresso pumping in my body right now. You got to bring yourself down to the floor, mentally speaking. Like, keep yourself level-headed and understand what is actually going to take place. What can actually go wrong? When things can go wrong, how do I then, fix it? This, again, as a top, you need to be able to first be able to identify the problems, and as a bottom, you first need to identify if something bad is going to happen, and you need to be aware of it. So it's just as important for the bottoms to know what should be happening and not just expecting what should be happening as it is for a top. The risk that comes into it is something that we all need to agree upon, and as we give consent, as we finish our negotiations, as we finalize what we should do in a scene, we need to then be able to say, I am going to put myself in this way. It is possible that I'm going to have problems in this, and this area if things go sideways. Not every kink play is as equally risky, right? The most riskiest in my mind may not be the most riskiest in yours. For me, CNC is a hard limit for me. I'll go into exactly why I don't like that, but in regards to just like the risk that can go inside of it, that is the black hole of risk. You can literally just say anything goes in the hole and comes out whatever comes out. We need to understand that when we say and agree these things and then we do the scene, let's say, for instance, the bottom did not have a good experience. Reality did not meet expectations. But if we were to look at it from a functional standpoint, we need to understand this was just a bad experience, right? If someone goes to a restaurant, they order food, they eat the food, it's not disgusting, but it's definitely not what you wanted and you were dissatisfied. You can't blame the restaurant if they cook the food perfectly fine. That risk, that unsatisfaction is something that we need to be capable of understanding and interpreting accurately. From a top perspective, we want to make sure that we do everything by the book, to the letter, dot the I's, cross the T's, and make sure that nothing can be misinterpreted. As the bottom, we need to understand that when we start looking at the actions after the fact, if we have some dissatisfaction of it, we want to make sure that we understand it, we compress it, not compress it, but we at least understand it and communicate with our tops. Right? This is usually something you do after the scenes. And if you ever do a scene with me, I always have like aftercare, and then aftercare is done, I will start, saying, how'd you do? Right? In the moment, right after the fact, or even during in the moment, consent can be taken away. Well, in the moment, it can be taken away. After the fact, it has to be reflected upon. Right? Certain situations need to be managed. Right? We want to make sure that if there was a bad situation, we don't just say and like take it on the chin, right? We want to stop it or say yellow, which is usually, for those who don't know, yellow is a pause button for some. It could be a slowdown for others. And we want to make sure that we understand exactly how this is happening, how is it unfolding. And if we don't like it, we should stop it and or communicate as well. So as we consent, we need to have the awareness of the risk, and then we need to consent to the actual act. All right? There is an acronym that a lot of people have. It's a bit of an old-fashioned one. Some people replace it with another. It's called RAC. That is Risk Awareness Consensual Kink. These acronyms are helpful, right? They are obviously some nuance that can be something that we want to clarify for some people, and there are some modern interpretations that do not want to deal with RAC, but instead have a more strict version of it. Again, at a certain point, we are artists and we are painting on canvases. Not everyone's going to paint the same way or interpret the subject at hand the same manner. So we need to have as much as we can a clear understanding, and if that means a communal understanding of certain behaviors and certain keywords, that's something that we need to take place. Okay. Any questions about the honest communications, the roles of negotiations between a bottom and a top, and or the actual risk and consenting to these risks? Feel free to type them out in chat, or get close to Taku and say them. So no lying. Oh, okay, Chihaya. They're typing it out. You mentioned overly accommodating as a red flag. I'm down for anything. What are some others? Okay, so pretty much anything that is a non-descriptive way of consenting, right? If somebody starts talking in non-descriptive ways using very vague keywords, those are in general things that I would say are not good ways of giving consent, right? Now, to each their own, right? Again, this is my personal take. If you say you're up for anything and I said, okay, guess what? It's consent. As from an organizational standpoint, you understand, or I'm going to interpret, you understand the risk that anything goes. And that I agree that anything goes means anything goes. As much as other people, myself included, would not agree with that definition, even the community that you're in would not agree to that definition. If we're talking about just between the two people, that is consent. That is binding consent. And some people, there's some people out there that are, they're rough. And they're literally down for anything. Very few and far between, and there are definitely a lot more people who say they're down for anything than there are who actually are. But again, non-descriptive ways are the worst ways to give consent. If somebody has a keyword, I would always encourage them to say, this is what this means, right? So if you say, oh, yes, I like daddy and little girls, right? What does that even mean? Right? What kind of dynamics of that? Am I an abusive father and you're like a bad little girl, or are you a brat? Am I like the responsible one? There's a lot of dynamics that you can describe within it that can easily be misinterpreted and or pushed to the side because you didn't go the next step further, which is simply saying exactly what you want. If you want to be treated like a little tiny princess where you're like, oh, sweetie, here, go in the little hole with all the pillows, right? Then yes, you gotta say it. They're not going to understand it. As a bottom or top, we can't read minds. So we have to just start having the trust that you'll communicate exactly what you want and that we'll be able to convey that as clearly as possible. There was someone typing down there. Zeth. Sorry, there's so many titles. North something?
Northlinks was typing, but
okay.
I don't know.
Typing it out.
Do you have another question? No question?
They're typing it out in the meantime.
Oh no, I think they're talking. But yeah, go ahead.
Everyone says the word communication. But there's lots of people who struggle with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about someone being mute. There's a whole lifespan that we all have of poor communication.
Sure.
With BDSM, communication is maybe one of the core keys. What is for someone maybe new or poor in communication, what is a good way to start communicating about such an important subject of what's okay in a scene, consent, when to stop? I mean, part of it with a long-term partner is you can read each other. But what about a pickup play or a new partnership? I want to hear what your thoughts are on that. Maybe it's a whole class even.
So, poor communication is something that is apparent, right? I speak from my own personal experience, right? I was a very sheltered person when I first grown up. Catholic schoolboy, I know, cute. Did the whole thing. Went into a BDSM dungeon the second I turned 18. Had no communication. I was sheltered. I was like, dear God, I only saw this on HBO, and what the fuck am I into right now? All of these things happen, right? For those who have poor communications, they don't have the experience in that. That's what you need. You need exposure. You need to be able to just say, you know what? I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna say I like, being naked in front of people. If you like that, cool. Can I be naked in front of you? You just gotta own up to it. The community is very accepting in that regards. You do you, I do me. If we get along together, then we can do each other. But with that being said, there are some people who have innate abilities that they can't gain experience, right? They just don't have the communication skills, but they still have the desire. This is a situation that comes into play, right? If you are having a hard time communicating with somebody, right? First off, I would always encourage you to have a person who has patience. Patience is definitely something that is going to be needed. If, say, compared to me, right? I'll sit here, wait for 5-10 minutes for you to think about what you want to do, put it in the exact words that you want to do it, and then I'll, ask questions from there on. Some people, it's not wrong. Some people are just like, cool, I'm not going to be okay with playing with somebody who takes this long to communicate. That's not the tempo of what I want to do. As somebody who has communication problems, do not take it personal. It is literally just a preference. Some people, they're just up for the whole pickup play, and they're like, I want to play right now. I don't want to communicate for some length of period of time. That's what they're willing to risk, and that's something that they're wanting to do. And at a certain point, these preferences and communications are just that. So for those who have the hard time talking about these things, whether it's because it's just a sensitive topic, it is not something that you're comfortable with, or you have some, communication problems, these are situations that you want to make sure you have a patient partner, somebody who can actually talk in the manner that you need to be spoken to, in the way that they can easily have the patience to listen. When you have that patience and you find a person that can do it, obviously it's going to be a lot more enjoyable than, say, if you did make the decision to play with someone who was, begrudgingly, wanting to pick up play, and you just kind of met their speed, right? Kind of an off topic, but kind of related point, right? In my eyes, BDSM is a performative art, right? It is a song, it is a play, it is a dance. And when you are doing this in a communicative environment, whether you are in a choir or you are in a play playing with other actors or you're dancing with a partner, it is so worth it. And I say this with 100%, genuine, please do this. It is so worth it to find somebody who meshes with you than settling with someone who doesn't, right? There are so many factors and so many ways that when you find that person that you can just kind of dance with, or the kind of person that you can just clearly communicate so effortlessly, making it work between that is kind of a better point to start your negotiations, your consent, and all of that sorts, than to continue on trying to find someone who's just like, yes, this person likes knife, I want to play with this person. Because I would much rather have a more easier time to communicate and to feel like the vibe check, essentially, with another partner than to find someone who is who's like an expert in this and does it in a very specific manner. Communication trumps kinks because better communication makes kinks better, but better kinks do not make communication better, is probably the best way to look at it. Any other questions? Yes, Peculiar. Come to Taku.
We have a few. Elle wants to know if it's okay if they put an example of people who, I'll make sure I say this right, I like to run through some examples if someone is everything goes. If that's okay with you.
Okay, so you want to have an example of someone who says anything goes? What?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
That was what Elle's question.
Sure, you can go ahead and say the example.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I think I missed it.
Yeah, I can help if you want.
Go for it.
Okay. I know. I was saying was in handling when someone says to them anything goes, and what they like to do with that person is run through some examples to try to get a more grounded answer.
Oh, as in whenever somebody replies, you give them an example? Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought you meant an example of someone who is anything goes. Yes. So that is the best way of kind of narrowing it down. If, like, for instance, somebody does come up to me and say, yes, anything goes, I'm up for it. There are situations where you will want to say, it's like, oh, cool. So I can dress you up like a clown, throw a pie in your face, and kick you in the balls? And they're going to be like, what? Like 9 out of 10 times they'll just kind of say that, and you're gonna be like, I can't do that? You said anything. I want to do that. And they're gonna be like, no, I wanted to do it like this. I'm like, well, say it then. Fucking do that shit. I always recommend don't give them such a grotesque or extreme example where it's like, oh, I can gut you like a fish and then like blah and all that sorts. No, make them look silly, right? They're dress them up like a clown. Put a little tutu skirt on them, give them like ballerina heels to like, tiptoe and do all that sorts, right? Make them feel silly for asking it. Don't make them feel like bad about it, but, help them understand why it's bad to actually start saying, I'm up for anything.
I know someone who's actually into that, so that wouldn't work with them.
There are people who are into that. They are people. For those people who are like, yeah, no, if they're actually down for anything and you give them an example like that and they're like, fuck yeah, do that. That's fucking unique as hell. Let's go for it. Some people are sensation and, scenario, and they search for the weird, man. And that's cool. But if they do that and that's something that you're not into, just say no. They'll find someone else. Because there's always someone else. There always will be another person.